So, hello and welcome back yet again to another chapter of A Tale of Two Cities, which it feels like, at least the story I'm interested in, definitely ramped up in the last few chapters, which I appreciate and hope that it continues. I don't know that it will because it feels like Charles Dickens got a real kick out of writing the story and then going off on a little tangent, which, again, I am not one to criticize. I mean, I guess I am, but I probably shouldn't be because Charles Dickens is or was a famous writer, and I'm just a lady who lives in the woods with a YouTube channel. That being said, I'm still going to be critical when I feel like it. So, yeah, it seems like Mr. Stryver probably has some nefarious plan going. Sidney Carton confessed his feelings to Miss Manette, but in such a way as to let her know that he does not actually expect any reciprocal feelings because he seems to have a very low sense of self-worth and a very high destructiveness quotient. And Charles Darnay, the one who spoke to her father and got her father's blessing, still hasn't made his feelings known to her at all. So, And of course, none of this helps because none of us know what her feelings are in any of this. But that is where kind of the story is. And of course, things in France are going terribly. Things in England are going however. And yeah, I guess we'll have to jump back in and see what is going on in chapter 14 of book 2. Book 2 is titled The Golden Thread. Chapter 14 is titled The Honest Tradesman. And with a title like that, I'm not sure who we're going to get into with this chapter. So on to chapter 14. To the eyes of Mr. Jeremiah Cruncher, sitting on his stool in Fleet Street with his grisly urchin beside him, a vast number and variety of objects in movement were every day presented. Who could sit upon anything in Fleet Street during the busy hours of the day and not be dazed and deafened by two immense processions, one ever trending westward with the sun, the other ever tending eastward from the sun, both ever tending to the plains beyond the range of red and purple where the sun goes down? With his straw in his mouth, Mr. Cruncher sat watching the two streams, like a heathen rustic who has for several centuries been on duty watching one stream, saving that Jerry had no expectation of the stream ever running dry, nor would it have been an expectation of a hopeful kind, since a small part of his income was derived from the pilotage of timid women, mostly in full habit and past the middle term of life, from Tellson's side of the tide to the opposite shore. Brief as such companionship was in every separate instant, Mr. Cruncher never failed to become so interested in the lady as to express a strong desire to have the honor of drinking to her very good health. And it was from the gifts bestowed upon him towards the execution of this benevolent purpose that he recruited his finances, as now just observed. Time was when a poet sat upon a stool in a public place and mused in the sight of men. Mr. Cruncher, sitting on a stool in a public place, but not being a poet, mused as little as possible and just looked around him. It fell out that he was thus engaged in a season when crowds were few and belated women few, and when his affairs in general were so unprosperous as to awaken a strong suspicion in his breast that Mrs. Cruncher must have been flopping in some pointed manner when an unusual concourse pouring down Fleet Street westward attracted his attention. Looking that way, Mr. Cruncher made out that some kind of a funeral was coming along, and that there was popular objection to this funeral, which was engendering an uproar. "Young Jerry," said Mr. Cruncher, turning to his offspring, "it's a burying."
"Hurrah, father!"
cried young Jerry. The young gentleman uttered this exultant sound with mysterious significance. The elder gentleman took the cry so ill that he watched for his opportunity and then smote the younger on the ear. "What do you mean? What are you hurrahing at? What do you want to convey to your own father, you young rip? This boy is getting too big for his britches," said Mr. Cruncher. "Him and his hurrahs. Don't let me hear no more of you, or you'll feel more of me, do you hear?"
"I wasn't doing no harm,"
young Jerry protested, rubbing his cheek. "Drop it. I won't have none of your no harms. Get on top of that there seat and look at the crowd." His son obeyed, and the crowd approached. They were bawling and hissing around a dingy hearse and a dingy mourning coach, in which mourning coach there was only one mourner dressed in dingy trappings that were considered essential to the dignity of the position. The position appeared by no means to please him, however, with an increasing rabble surrounding the coach, deriding him and making grimaces at him, and incessantly groaning and calling each other and calling him spies, yaha, spies, with many complaints that were too numerous and too forcible to repeat. Funerals had at all times a remarkable attraction for Mr. Cruncher. He always picked up his senses and became excited when a funeral passed Tellson's. Naturally, therefore, a funeral with this uncommon attendance excited him greatly, and he asked of the first man who ran against him, "What is it, brother? What is it about?"
"I don't know,"
said the man.
"Spies! Yaha! Tst! Spies!"
So Jerry asked another man, "Who is it?" "I don't know," said the man, clapping his hands to his mouth nonetheless, and saying in surprising heat and with great ardor, "Spies! Yaha! Tst! Spies!" Finally, a person better informed on the merits of the case rumbled against Jerry, and from this person he learned that the funeral was the funeral of one Roger Cly. "Was he a spy?" said Mr. Cruncher. "Old Bailey spy," said the informant. "Yaha! Tst! Yah! Old Bailey spies." "Why, to be sure," said Jerry, recalling the trial at which he had assisted. "I've seen him. Dead, is he?" "Dead as mutton," said the man, "and can't be too dead. Have 'em out there, spies, put 'em out there." Spies. The idea was so acceptable, in the prevalent absence of any idea, that the crowd caught up the cry with eagerness, and loudly repeating the suggestion to have 'em out and pull 'em out, mobbed the two vehicles so closely that they came to a stop. On the crowd's opening the coach doors, the mourner scuttled out himself and was in their hands for a moment, but he was so alert and made such good use of his time that in just another moment he was scouring away up a by-street, after shedding his cloak, hatband, and white pocket handkerchief, and other symbolic tears. These the people tore to pieces and scattered far and wide with great enjoyment, while the tradesmen hurriedly shut up their shops, for crowds in this time stopped at nothing, and would be a monster much dreaded. They had already gotten the length of opening the hearse to take the coffin out, when some bright genius proposed instead that it be escorted to its destination amongst general rejoicing. Practical suggestions being much needed, this suggestion too was received with acclamation, and the coach was immediately filled with 8 inside and a dozen outside, while as many people got on the roof of the hearse as could, by exercise of ingenuity, upon it. Among the first of these volunteers was Jerry Cruncher himself, who modestly concealed his spiky head from observation from Tellson's, and sat in the farthest corner of the mourning coach. The officiating undertakers made some protest about these changes in ceremonies, but the river being alarmingly near, and several voices remarking on the efficacy of cold immersion in bringing refractory members of the profession to reason, their protest was faint and very brief. The remodel procession started, with a chimney sweep driving the hearse, being advised by the regular driver, who was perched beside him for the purpose of driving, and with a pieman, also attended by his cabinet minister, driving the mourning coach. A bear leader, a popular street character of the time, was impressed as an additional ornament before the cavalcade had gone very far down the Strand, and his bear, who was black and very mangy, gave quite an undertaking air to that part of the procession in which he walked. Thus, with beer drinking, pipe smoking, song roaring, and caricatures of woe, this disorderly procession went on its way, recruiting at every step and at every shop that was shutting up before it. Its destination was the old church of St. Pancras, far off in the fields. It got there, in the course of time, and insisted on pouring into the burial ground, finally accomplished the interment of the deceased Roger Cly in its own way, and very much to its own satisfaction. And now we have, with the poor bear right in the front, an illustration of the spy's funeral. The dead man disposed of, and the crowd being under the necessity of providing some other entertainment for itself, another bright genius, or maybe even the same, conceived of the humor of impeaching casual passers-by as Old Bailey spies and wreaking vengeance upon them. Chase was given to some scores of inoffensive people who had never been near the Old Bailey in their lives. In the realization of this fancy, they were roughly hustled and poorly treated. The transition to the sport of window breaking, and thence to the plundering of public houses, came easily and naturally after that. At last, after several hours, when sundry summer houses had been pulled down and some area railings had been torn up to arm the more belligerent spirits, a rumor got about that the guards were coming. Before this rumor, the crowd gradually melted away, and perhaps the guards came. Perhaps they never came. And this was the usual progress of a mob. Mr. Cruncher did not assist at the closing sport, but had remained behind in the churchyard to confer and condole with the undertakers. The place had a soothing influence on him. He procured a pipe from a neighboring public house and smoked it, looking at the railings and maturely considering the area. "Jerry," said Mr. Cruncher, talking to himself in the usual way, "you see that there Clyde that day, and you see with your own eyes that he was a young 'un and a straight maiden." Having smoked his pipe and ruminating for a little longer, he turned himself about that he might appear, before the hour of closing, on his station at Tellson's. Whether his meditation on morality had touched his liver, or whether his general health had been previously at all amiss, or whether he desired to show a little attention to an eminent man, is not so much to the purpose as that he made a short call upon his medical adviser, a distinguished surgeon, on his way back. Young Jerry relieved his father with dutiful interest and reported no jobs while he had been gone. The bank closed. The ancient clerks came out, the usual watch was set, and Mr. Cruncher and his son went home to tea. Now, I tell you, where is it?" said Mr. Cruncher to his wife upon entering. "If as an honest tradesman my winters go wrong tonight, I'll make sure that you've been praying agin me again, and I'll work you for it just the same as if I'd seen you do it." The very dejected Mrs. Cruncher shook her head. "Why, you're at it in front of my face," said Mr. Cruncher, with signs of angry apprehension.
"I am saying nothing."
"Well, then, don't meditate nothing. You might as well flop as meditate. You may as well go agin me one way as you can go agin me the other. Drop it."
"Yes, Jerry."
"Yes, Jerry," said Mr. Cruncher, sitting down to tea. "Ah, it is yes, Jerry. That's about it. You may say yes, Jerry." Mr. Cruncher had no particular meaning in these sulky words, but made use of them, as people do not unfrequently do, to express general ironical dissatisfaction. "You and your yes, Jerry," said Mr. Cruncher, taking a bite out of his bread and butter, and seeming to help it down with a large invisible oyster from his saucer. "Ah, I think so, I believe you."
"Are you going out tonight?"
asked his decent wife when he took another bite. "Yeah, I am."
"May I go out with you, father?"
said his son. "No, you mayn't. I'm a-goin', as your mother knows, a-fishin'. That's where I'm a-goin'. Goin' a-fishin'."
"Your fishing rod gets rather rusty, doesn't it, father?"
"Never you mind."
"Are you going to bring any fish home, father?"
"If I don't, you'll have short commons tomorrow," said Jerry, shaking his head. "That's questions enough for you. I ain't a-goin' out till you're long abed." He devoted himself through the remainder of the evening to keeping a most vigilant watch on Mrs. Cruncher, and sullenly holding her in conversation that she might be prevented from meditating on any petitions that would be to his disadvantage. With this view, he urged his son to hold her in conversation also, and led the unfortunate woman a hard life, by dwelling on any causes of complaint that he could bring against her, rather than leave her for a moment to her own reflections. The devoutest person could have rendered no greater homage to the efficacy of an honest prayer than he did in this distrust of his wife. It was as though a professed unbeliever in ghosts were frightened by a ghost story. "And mind you," said Mr. Cruncher, "no games tomorrow. If I, as an honest tradesman, succeed in providing a jint of meat or two, none of your not touching of it, and sticking to bread. If I, as an honest tradesman, am able to provide a little beer, none of your declaring on water. When you go to Rome, do as Rome does. Rome will be an ugly customer to you if you don't. I'm your Rome, you know. And then he went back to grumbling some more. With your flying in the face of your own wittles and drink. I don't know how scarce you may make the wittles and drink here, but your flopping tricks and your unfeeling conduct. Look at your boy. He is yourn, ain't he? He's thin as a lath. Do you call yourself a mother and not know that a mother's first duty is to blow her boy out? This touched young Jerry on a tender place, who told his mother to perform her first duty, and whatever else she did or neglected, above all things to lay a special stress on the discharge of that maternal function so delicately indicated by his other parent. Thus the evening wore away with the Cruncher family, until young Jerry was ordered to bed, and his mother, laid under similar instructions, obeyed. Mr. Cruncher beguiled the earlier watches of the night with solitary pipes, and did not start upon his excursion until almost 1 o'clock. Towards that small and ghostly hour he rose from his chair, took a key out of his pocket, and opened a locked cupboard, and brought forth a sack, a crowbar of convenient size, a rope, a chain, and other fishing tackle of that nature. Disposing these articles about him in a skillful manner, he bestowed a parting defiance upon Mrs. Cruncher, extinguished the light, and headed out. Young Jerry, who had only pretended undressing when he went to bed, didn't take long to follow his father. Under the cover of darkness, he followed him out of the room, down the stairs, through the court, and out into the streets. He was in no uneasiness concerning his getting into the house again, for it was full of lodgers, and the door stood a little bit open all night. Impelled by a laudable ambition to study the art and mystery of his father's honest calling, young Jerry, keeping as close to house fronts, walls, and doorways as his eyes were close to one another, held his honored parent always in view. This honored parent, steering north, had not gone far when he was joined by another disciple of Isaac Walton, and the two trudged along together. Within half an hour from first starting, they were beyond the winking lamps and the more than winking watchmen, and they were out upon a lonely road. Another fisherman was picked up here, and that so silently that if young Jerry had been superstitious, he might have supposed the second follower of the gentle craft to have suddenly split himself in two. The three of them went on, and young Jerry went on until the three stopped under a bank overhanging the road. Up on top of the bank was a low brick wall surmounted by an iron railing. In the shadow of the bank and the wall, the three turned out of the road and up a blind lane, of which the wall, there risen to some 8 or 10 feet high, formed one side. Crouching down in a corner, peering up the lane, the next object that young Jerry saw was the form of his honored parent, pretty well defined against a watery, clouded moon, nimbly scaling an iron gate. He was soon over, and then the second fisherman went over, and then the third. They all dropped softly on the ground within the gate, and lay there a little, listening perhaps. Then they moved away on hands and knees. It was now young Jerry's turn to approach the gate, which he did holding his breath. Crouching down again in a corner there, and looking in, he made out the three fishermen creeping through some rank grass, and saw all the gravestones in the churchyard. It was a large churchyard they were in, looking on like ghosts in white, while the church tower itself looked like a ghost of a monstrous giant. They didn't creep far before they stopped and stood upright. And then they began to fish. They fished with a shovel at first. Presently, the honored parent appeared to be adjusting some instrument like a great corkscrew. Whatever tools they were working with, they worked hard until the awful striking of the church clock so terrified young Jerry that he made off with his hair sticking up as stiff as his father's always did. But his long-cherished desire to know more about these matters not only stopped him in his running away, but lured him back again. The three were still fishing perseveringly, and when he peeped in at the gate for a second time, they seemed to have gotten a bite. There was a screwing and complaining sound down below, and their bent figures were strained as though by a weight. By slow degrees, the weight broke away the earth upon it and came up to the surface. Young Jerry knew very well what it would be, but when he saw it, and saw his honored parent about to wrench it open, he was so frightened, being new to the sight, that he ran off again, and didn't stop this time until he had gone a mile or more. He might not have even stopped then for anything less necessary than breath, it being a spectral sort of race he was running, and one highly desirable to get to the end of. He had a strong idea that the coffin that he had seen was running after him, and he pictured it as hopping behind him, bolt upright on its narrow end, always upon the point of overtaking him and hopping on at his side, or maybe even taking his arm, that he decided it was a pursuer to shun. It was an inconsistent fiend as well, for while it was making the whole night behind him dreadful, he darted out into the roadway to avoid dark alleys, fearful of its coming out and hopping out of them like a boy's kite without a tail and wings. It hid in doorways, too, rubbing its horrible shoulders against the doors and drawing them up to his ears as though it were laughing. It got into the shadows on the road and lay cunningly on its back to trip him. And all this time it was also incessantly hopping on behind and gaining on him, so that when the boy got to his own door, he had good reason for being half dead. And even then the coffin would not leave him. It followed him up the stairs with a bump on every stair, scrambled into bed with him, and bumped down dead and heavy upon his chest when he fell asleep. From this oppressed slumber, young Jerry in his closet was awakened after daybreak and before sunrise by the presence of his father in the family room. Something had gone wrong with him. At least that's what young Jerry inferred, from the circumstance of his holding Mrs. Cruncher by the ears and knocking the back of her head against the headboard of the bed. "I told you I would," said Mr. Cruncher, "and I did."
Jerry, Jerry,
his wife implored. "You oppose yourself to the profit of the business," said Jerry, "and me and my partners suffer. You was to honor and obey. Why didn't you?"
"I try to be a good wife, Jerry,"
said the poor woman. I don't know why Jerry's voice is so hard for me, but I think I'm going to change it. "Is it being a good wife to oppose your husband's business? Is it honoring your husband to dishonor his business? Is it obeying your husband to disobey him on the vital subject of his business?"
"You hadn't taken to such dreadful businesses then, Jerry,"
"It's enough for you," said Mr. Cruncher, "to be the wife of an honest tradesman, and not to occupy your female mind with calculations when he's out on his trade or when he isn't. An honoring and obeying wife would let his trade alone. Call yourself a religious woman. If you're a religious woman, give me an irreligious one. You have no more natural sense of duty than the bed of this here Thames River has of a pile, and similarly it must be knocked into you." This altercation was conducted in a low tone of voice, and terminated in the honest tradesman kicking off his clay-soiled boots and lying down upon the floor. After taking a timid peep at him laying on his back, with his rusty hands under his head as a pillow, young Jerry also laid down and fell asleep again. There was no fish for breakfast, and not much of anything else. Mr. Cruncher was out of spirits and out of temper, and kept an iron pot lid by him as a projectile for the correction of Mrs. Cruncher, in case he observed any symptoms of her saying grace. He was brushed and washed at the usual hour, and set off with young Jerry to pursue his day calling. Young Jerry, walking with the stool under his arm at his father's side along the sunny and crowded Fleet Street, was a very different young Jerry from the one last night, running home through darkness and solitude from his pursuer. His cunning was fresh with the day, and his qualms gone in the night, in which particulars it is not improbable that he held compeers in Fleet Street and the city of London on that fine morning.
"Father,"
said young Jerry, as they walked along, taking care to keep at arm's length and to have the stool well between them,
"what's a resurrection man?"
Mr. Cruncher came to a stop on the pavement before he said, "How should I know?"
"I thought you knowed everything, father,"
said the boy. "Humph! Well," said Mr. Cruncher, beginning to walk again and lifting off his hat to give his spiky hair free play, "he's a tradesman."
"What are his goods, father?"
said young Jerry. "His goods," said Mr. Cruncher, "scientific goods."
"People's bodies, ain't it, father?"
said the boy. "I believe it's something of that sort."
"Oh, father, I should so like to be a resurrection man when I'm quite growed up."
And with that, Mr. Cruncher was soothed, but he shook his head in a dubious moral way. "Depends on how you develop your talents. Be careful to develop your talents, and never say no more than you can help to nobody. There's no telling at the present time what you may not come to be fit for." And young Jerry, thus encouraged, went a few yards in advance to put the stool in the shadow of the bar, and Mr. Cruncher added to himself, "Jerry, you honest tradesman, there's hopes what that boy'll be a blessing to you, and a payment for his mother." And that is the end of chapter 14. I don't know what it is about the voice I keep trying to do for Jerry. I picture him as having a very gravelly voice, and obviously gravelly is not suiting my throat right now, so I may have to think of something else. I really had to suppress a coughing fit from trying to talk. That was an interesting chapter. I figured that Jerry probably had an interesting nighttime occupation. I wasn't quite thinking he was a resurrection man, but I guess it makes sense. Also, poor Mrs. Cruncher. Honestly, poor any female character in this book, because they're just sort of set dressing, Even Miss Manette just feels like set dressing. I guess Dickens figured he would write what he knew, and what he knew was male characters, so that's mostly what we're going to get. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. No chapter tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is my live stream night, so there will be no chapter. You are more than welcome to come and watch me pull my hair out as I play The Sims. That's what I do pretty much every Friday night, and you are always welcome to join. We babble, we chat, we laugh at The Sims, and it's generally a pretty chill, pretty good time. But other than that, thank you so much for listening. Please do hit the thumbs up on your way out, and I will see you guys Saturday.